my channel. Today I have 3 more Dollar Tree fall decor DIYs. You guys have really seemed to be enjoying my other Dollar Tree fall DIYs, so here I am with another one. If you guys haven't seen those videos and you want to check them out, I'll have them linked in the description box below. Let's go ahead and get right into today's DIYs. For the first DIY in today's video, I'm going to be making this pumpkin patch sign. And to make this, I'll be using these 3 signs from Dollar Tree. I'll also be using the Waverly Inspirations chalk paint in the color Plaster, the Folk Art chalk paint in the colors Castle and also in Sage, pumpkin stickers from Dollar Tree, this pumpkin patch wax paper printout from my computer, paintbrushes, and my hot glue gun. To start out, I'm painting all 3 signs with the Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster. I did have to do 2 coats of this paint, and on one of the signs I did not paint the top and bottom because it was not going to be showing. Once my paint was dry, I took that Folk Art chalk paint in the color Castle and I'm dry brushing that on top of all of the white. I'm focusing my paint on all of the edges of this sign so that I can have a really distressed and weathered look. I'm taking my paint in the color Sage and painting this wooden pumpkin sticker, and then I'm going to paint the stem in that color Castle. Next up, I'm taking some hot glue and I'm placing it on the side of the sign that I didn't paint, and I'm placing another one of the signs right on top of that so that they're attached together. Once I've got those 2 attached, I'm taking some more hot glue and I'm placing it on top of the sign that I just attached to the first one, and then I'm placing the 3rd sign on top of the 2nd one and then just holding those together until they're all 3 attached. Now I'm taking my wax paper printout and I'm centering it in the middle where I want it, and then I'm taking the end of a paintbrush and I'm just going over all of the words that are on my sign so that the ink transfers onto my painted surface. I'm making sure to hold my paper really still so that the ink doesn't smear. To make my transfer, I created this design on my computer. I cut the wax paper down to printer paper size, put it in my printer, and hit print. And for the last step, I'm attaching this wooden pumpkin sticker with some hot glue right in the middle of the words you and pick. And this is the final result for this sign. Let's go ahead and move on to DIY number 2, which is this framed thankful and blessed sign. For this DIY, I'll be using this buffalo check craft paper from Hobby Lobby, Waverly chalk paint in the colors ink and also in the color Plaster, the Folk Art chalk paint in the color Castle, an 8x10 frame from Dollar Tree. I'll also be using this thankful and blessed design printout from my computer, paintbrushes, matte Mod Podge, a sponge brush, and a black paint pen. To start this DIY, I'm taking this 8x10 frame apart and I'm going to be painting the outside of the frame with that Waverly chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I did have to do 2 coats of this paint. Once that paint was dry, I'm taking my paint in the color Castle and I'm dry brushing that all over my frame. Once I have that color all dry brushed on, I'm going to be taking my paint in the color ink and I'm going to be dry brushing that over top of the Castle color that I just dry brushed on. I wanted to add a little bit of black onto this frame to match the buffalo check. And now I'm just going to be taking the glass part of the frame and I'm measuring it out on my buffalo check paper and I'm cutting it down to size. I'm cutting the excess paper off of this thankful and blessed printout so that it's a little bit easier for me to see where I want to center it in the middle of my frame. And then here I'm just marking off where I want to cut off a little bit more of the excess paper. Now that that's cut down to size, I'm going to be taking some scrap paper and using this as a guide to help me make a border around all 4 edges of my printout. I'm just using a scrap piece of paper, kind of like a ruler, to make a straight edge around all of the sides. And then I'm using my black paint pen to make the black border. You could also use a Sharpie marker. Now that I have my border all made, I'm taking this matte Mod Podge and I'm painting it on the back of my printout with a sponge paintbrush. Now I'm taking the printout that has the Mod Podge on it and just placing it in the center of the buffalo check paper to glue it down. And the very last step in this DIY is just placing everything back into the frame. And this is the finished thankful and blessed frame sign. Let's move on to the 3rd and final DIY for today, which is this harvest sign. To make this DIY, I'll be using this Harvest Blessing hanging sign from Dollar Tree. the Waverly Inspirations chalk paint in the colors Plaster, Truffle, and also in the color Hazelnut. Folk Art chalk paint in the color Sage and also in the color Castle. Paintbrushes, painter's tape. I'll also be using this Harvest Word from Dollar Tree, raffia, and some burlap ribbon from Dollar Tree. To make my sign, I'm going to be using the back of this Dollar Tree sign, and I'm first starting out by taking out the jute hanger. It's going to be easier for me to paint this way, and then I'm taking some painter's tape and I'm marking off where I want to paint a few different colored lines on the front of this sign. I wanted to make really thin paint lines on this sign, and I'm using the holes that held the jute hanger as a guide to make my straight lines. I'm just placing the painter's tape on each side of that hole. Once I've got my painter's tape on, I'm going to be taking my chalk paint in the color Plaster, and I'm painting this on the two ends of my sign and also in the middle. I did have to do 2 coats of this paint, and I made sure that I painted around all of the edges as well. Once I got that painted on, I'm now taking the Castle color paint and I'm just painting that in between my painter's tape. After all of my paint has dried, I'm now taking off all of the painter's tape that I had put on in the beginning. Next, I'm going to be adding some more painted lines on this sign, and to do that I'm using some more painter's tape, and I'm using the cutouts that are already on this sign as a guide to help me make a straight line, and I wanted my lines to be really thin, just like the other lines that I already made. Now that I've got my tape on, I'm going to be taking my paint in the color Castle, and I'm going to be painting that right in between the painter's tape that I just applied. Now I'm making another line with my painter's tape on the bottom and the top of this sign, and I'm going to be painting my chalk paint in the color Hazelnut in between the painter's tape that I just applied. Once all of my paint has completely dried, I'm carefully peeling off all of the painter's tape that I've applied. Next up, I'm taking my paint in the color Sage, and I'm painting this on the 2 outer thick lines that are still unpainted on the sign. After I've got the sage color all painted on, I'm then taking this color Truffle and I'm painting it on the 2 inner lines that are left over on each side of the sign, and I'm using a small paintbrush for this so that I can stay really neat and not mess up any of my painted lines. Once all of that paint's dry, I'm taking the color Castle and I'm dry brushing that all over the entire sign. Then I'm going to be taking the color Truffle and dry brushing that right over top of Castle that I just did. Then to distress the darker stripes that I painted on, I'm going to be taking the color Plaster and just dry brushing that right over top. Next, I'm going to be adding some of this burlap ribbon right to the center of my sign, and I'm going to be doing that by using a little bit of hot glue. I'm just placing some hot glue on the back of the sign and then folding the burlap ribbon over top to attach it. Now I'm going to be attaching this metal Harvest Word, and to do that I'm just using some hot glue. I'm placing the glue right on the actual metal of the word, and then I'm placing that on top of the ribbon. Now I'm reattaching the jute hanger that I took off in the beginning. I was going to leave my sign like that, but I decided to add a raffia bow. So here I'm just making the bow, and once I've got my bow made, I'm going to be attaching it with some hot glue. I'm placing the hot glue right on the back of the center of the raffia bow, and then I'm just attaching it to my sign. For the very last step in this DIY, I'm cutting off any of the extra long strands of my bow. This is the finished harvest sign, and that was the last DIY for today. All of these were so inexpensive to make. If you guys enjoyed today's video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're not subscribed, I would love it so much if you would subscribe. Be sure to hit that notification bell so you can be notified for all of my future videos. As always, thank you so much for watching.